It really is terrible, but it's now endangering, it's endangering me. How many more doors do I need to keep paying for,
How many more break-ins are we going to have to tolerate? So, I don't know. Maybe there's a possibility. We know that the entire wash cannot be chained off or fenced off, but perhaps the area under the bridge, maybe that could be chained off because that's the desirable place for those people to be.
Well, I'm sorry, I want to add one more thing because I want the neighbors on this to hear this. It's not so much even the police. Our next door neighbor reported to us after our break-in was at 12:30 on a Saturday morning, early
Afternoon, no.
We drove 2 hours to get to the property. We met the officer, God love her, for waiting to keep our house safe. Had she said, I have another call, I have to go, we would have been screwed. Any of them would have walked into our home, okay? I guess once my alarm's triggered once, I guess it's triggered. But our neighbor said at 10 or 11 the next morning, they saw another homeless person that looked like they were casing our home in our backyard, picking our fruit. Okay, now I can build a 12-foot fence. I can get on the roof with a shotgun, but my God, what are we going to make our neighborhood into if that's the case? So my concern, if they're bold people,
and they're becoming more emboldened. They're becoming more emboldened to do what they want to do.
Thank you for sharing that, gentlemen. Thank you.
Sounds like a voice.
Mike, I'd like to just, my name's Mark Krause. I'm the general manager for Desert Water Agency. Our operations center is just north of the water park, and then we have a recycled water facility that's very near the wash. And I just wanted to let you know that we sustained some damage in that fire that was referred to. We had a valve enclosure, excuse me, that was damaged and caught on fire. We've sustained a lot of damage at the agency. We have a bathroom that we built for.
The guy from the water company is talking about the damage he's had over his place.
Right.
Yeah.
And
On your phone?
can you hear me? Hello? Yeah. Okay. So we had someone break into a bathroom on our operations center property. They created a huge mess. We had to clean up, and we had to fortify the door, put new locks on. We now have security that we had to hire to patrol at night because people camp out there. They leave lots of garbage, that kind of thing. So it's impacting our operation. I just wanted to let you know that, and that water service is a vital service, and they're attacking a utility as well as the residents.
Thank you, Mark. And when you're talking about your facility, you're talking about your facility directly north of the storage center and the water park, correct?
Correct. We've also had them on our recycled water property as well. And there's a lot of dangerous chemicals that we use and things like that. So I think it's a serious problem.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a question from Mark Sesenya.
Ernest Sesenya?
I'm sorry, there we go.
I haven't been in Palm Springs very long, and I love this neighborhood. I fell in love with it very quickly. The neighborhood is amazing. So when I hear not just the stories that are being said right here, mail being stolen seems to be very common amongst the neighborhood. I've seen mailboxes bashed in. I know people have reported cameras being ripped off walls, ring doorbells being ripped off the walls. I mean, it goes on, and I hear the fear and the frustration from the neighbors. to where people don't want to walk around here anymore out of fear. I've heard neighbors even talk about moving. I know there's no easy answer, but I want it noted that this is a huge issue in our area, and we need to work together to come up with something that's gonna make a difference for everyone's lives in this neighborhood.
Gus, there's a few more questions in the chat.
On the chat?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on a second while I scroll through them. We got a couple of suggestions. One of the suggestions made by Dave. The wash after the big rain 3 years ago almost overflowed. Apparently the county cleared up the wash southwest of Genotry. The flood prevention dredging not only enhanced flood control, but removed the camouflage. Thus, what are the politics of continuing the flood prevention measures northeast of Genotry Bridge? This kills two birds with one stone. Flood prevention, which a major flood could reappear, and remove the coverage the homeless live in. In a flood, water is going to cascade northeast, then hit the debris east of the bridge and back up. So real quick, if you do have a question, if you click at the bottom, you'll see participants. Click on that option, and you do have the option of posing a question there.
So Chief, and to our police staff, could we talk about, just from a solutions perspective of some of the things that we have been doing and what we potentially can do in the future, and some additional things? Like, for one, in talking with Mike McCullough previously, the suggestion as well, if we had at least no parking signs on Cherry Hill or in other parts around there. So that's one of the ideas. So those are the kinds of things I'd like some feedback from. I think it'd be helpful for us from the neighborhood. Would you welcome something like that? Ultimately, we can go there, but it's helpful if the neighborhood supports it. So there's those kinds of things that may or may not be completely helpful, obviously. But Chief, could you talk about what you can do from the police perspective?
Absolutely. I'll turn it over to Captain Koloff shortly, just so he can share in detail what we have been doing and the resources we've been allocating to this area and how frequent. But we also can, because the comments in regards to the camouflaging, the overgrown brush, that is a critical piece. We find that throughout our city on vacant lots or anywhere that there's overgrown brush. It makes it very easy for the homeless to set up camp and be there for any period of time. That's something we can probably address in the wash and working with our city streets department and clearing that out. So we will reach out to Stacy and see what we can do to get a major cleanup and start cutting back on that brush in the wash area, so it makes them stand out very visible, make it more difficult for them to set up shop in the wash. But I'll turn it over to Captain Koloff so he can discuss what we've been doing so far. And then, as he mentioned earlier, we're going to really need the participants to share the times of the day, the certain days of the week that you see them more frequently than others, so we can try to narrow down times and days and send some resources during those given times.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we've been out there frequently, and we come out there, several times a week with our homeless teams, with service providers. As for parking issue along the curb line on Cherry Hills near Broadmoor, that would solve the issue with the one vehicle that we're having a problem with, or there's more. But ultimately, it's the camping out in the wash and the folks that are causing disturbances out there that likely don't have cars. So we'll continue to bring more of a presence there. I understand you want to see enforcement. Keeping in mind that, if we make with enforcement, it might make it less of a desirable location if you're enforcing various different crimes there. Right now, unfortunately, with COVID, if we arrest somebody for breaking into your home, they're going to go to the jail and they're going to be released on a citation. The only people that are staying in jail right now are violent offenses. So it's kind of a revolving door in terms of enforcement. People are not staying in jail. People are not staying in jail for warrants. We do get them off the streets and get them out of here for a bit of time. One of the questions asked in the chat was, what is close patrolling? It's when I set up a close patrol, or Lieutenant Ariza sets up a close patrol, where we're going to have officers dispatched to that area multiple times a day to check for activity. That's where we're dispatching. It's just not a routine patrol. And we basically use your information when you're seeing activity to direct our resources towards it. That's why it's important to report crime, because when we have crime reported to us, we use that as a resource. We need to direct folks in that area at a certain time. So that's one other option we would do. As for clearing out all of the brush, like Chief said, that would be a decision made ultimately by city staff, if that's feasible to clear all that brush out.
Yeah.
I understand what happened on the other side of the wash after the flood, but I don't believe any of that area was City of Palm Springs property where they cleaned that area out.
So allow me to get focused on the brush issue, since a good part of that is city. There may be some restrictions from flood control, but I think we do have quite a bit of discretion to clear that out. So let me put that on as a priority.
Well, we do have a question from Barbara. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I live on one of the condos that are surrounded by the golf course. And the problem that we're having with the homeless is that they're coming in and using our spas. We have fairly high walls on them, but they're jumping the walls and bathing in there. And we're finding trash and drug paraphernalia, having the spas drained and cleaned because the water's being polluted because they're using it as a bathroom. Is this something that we should be reporting?
Yes, very much so. Obviously, we need to be aware of it so we can address it, because I don't know which condo complex you live in. We've had reports of some issues in one of the local ones now near Broadmoor and Waverly, more with one problem tenant in there we've been dealing with. But yes, you should report that information. But we will need this. We just can't arbitrarily kick people out of there. We're going to need somebody to step up from either the homeowners association, the management team, and say, hey, this person is trespassing. Because we need a victim for trespassing on private property that would want to prosecute for that and to make a report.
Okay, thank you. And my other concern is, I know this is nothing that's even anywhere near being definite, but talk about returning the golf course to its natural habitat. And if we have more natural habitat around our properties, this problem is only going to get worse.
If you're talking about the golf course areas between all the homes in this neighborhood,
yes,
turning that golf course, yes, I could see that being an issue, because we'd have more vacant areas that aren't being golfed on, and then what else is it going to be used for? And it obviously would have the potential to add to the homeless issues in the neighborhood.
And I would just note that that has been a discussion item. There's been absolutely no decision made there, and City Council, before any decision, would have a significant number of public meetings and hearings before they would make a decision. So I didn't want to speak for you on that, Mayor, but I just want to let everyone know that that there's been no decision made on that yet.
All right, next question, go back to Ernest.
Yeah, I know that, so you talked about this vehicle that we've had parking, or this suspicious vehicle that's been parking around here. I understand there's a homeless division. The police work with the homeless, kind of reach out, understand who's in the city. Is that correct? Get to know them?
We have a team, ultimately, if everybody's healthy, of 3 officers on the department and 2 community service officers that do homeless calls only across the city. So on any given time, we should have at least one officer on duty with a community service officer. I will tell you this, police officers are not immune to the coronavirus, and it has impacted our staffing. So there have been a lot of days of late where we've had patrol officer vacancies where our homeless teams have had to fill on a patrol. So that has impacted some of our response citywide to homelessness. It's impacted traffic. It's impacted our detective bureau. At one point we had 27 members of our department out, either quarantined or with COVID. So there's the ebbs and flows of the coronavirus, but we have teams that work out there, and that's who were out there last week. And that's who generally who's going to do the enforcement out there between the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. It's going to be those officers, and they have a rapport with the homeless. They pretty much know the majority of who they're dealing with and what they're about.
So is it understood who the suspect that goes by the name Puppet, is the police aware of who this person is?
In terms of the suspect in what?
In the arson?
That investigation is still active. I'm not going to comment on that. I don't really know the nickname of any suspects in it, or would I confirm it? I'm sorry, sir.
And then the suspicious vehicle where the license plate has been provided, has that been reviewed to see if there is any link to criminal activity?
Yeah, we're very well aware of the vehicle, the pictures of it, and the vehicle does not come back to this area, but we're very well aware of the vehicle.
Okay.
I would take a question from Christopher Carnino.
Yeah, it's not exactly a question, but what I'd like to say is that a periodic drive-by or something is really not going to address anything, because that's a very random thing. What can be done that we could establish something that there would be, with good cause, an immediate dispatch, so that when we see somebody that we know that they're doing something that's not right, and we make a call. I mean, it's not necessarily a 911 call. It's not like somebody's losing their life. But if we see something or we see criminal activity, to get an immediate dispatch that somebody's going to be there, in 5 minutes, then we have a hope of apprehension of, people in wrongdoing. But if it's just that, well, I think I see them on Saturday mornings, or I think I see them on Friday nights. And so, okay, well, you're going to come by on a Friday night. I think that's an utter waste of time. I do not think that is going to be productive in the slightest form. I think we need more of like, a report and a dispatch, report and a response. Not for every single thing, not just because you see somebody looking homeless walking, but if you see somebody who is behaving erratically, if you see somebody where they're not supposed to be, i.e. our backyard, get a dispatch. Look, with all the COVID happening right now, restaurants are closed, the bars are closed. There's a lot of inactivity. There's not a lot going on. So I'm thinking that maybe, some of this, maybe availability can be used productively to have a dispatch or have a certain force or whatever.
Maybe I can inject while we're both on the same microphone here. The two things I was curious to know if the police department has found over the course of time areas, whether it's businesses, I'm going to assume businesses, that are well stocked with outdoor cameras that are not reachable. Do they find that attracts less of a colony of activity than obviously areas that don't? And if that's the case, is it possible to even mount cameras by the wash that aren't reachable? And would it really impact these homeless because they're pretty brazen? you know, what Chris is trying to say about immediate response is, I heard from 5 neighbors around the Cherry Hill curve, the crazy wacko job that came out screaming one night and terrified the hell out of me. She was going at what, 2 in the morning she started? I don't know. She starts beating on everyone's doors. One house she stayed at for quite a while, walking around, beating every window, let me in, and, you know, let me in. And they called the police. I think he said it was over 2 hours. There was still no response. And I understand the police are busy and that may not take precedence. But she went down from house to house. And I'll tell you what, I guess I'm just going to risk it, but I'll invite her in and beat the living hell out of her if that's what it takes, because every neighbor was terrified. They were terrified.
Yeah, we're not going to sit here and be
I mean,
victimized.
I just think, good God, I heard 5 houses had this happening at 2
Yeah.
in the morning. She would not stop. So my point to that is, we got someone out there because Simply Safe had the alarm going off, could not reach me because my phone had been turned off by it inadvertently. The police were automatically dispatched. So do you have to have an alarm that you're going to set off in order to get someone to come out? Is that more effective? I'm not trying to burn your resources. You know, what do you call, you know, you scream,
Cry wolf.
cry wolf, but was it the alarm in my house that got someone out there? And, you know, if,
Well, yes.
you know, if I lived alone and I were a lady, no, I'm not trying to be misogynistic here. I'm just trying to be realistic. If I were, you know, a neighbor who we love dearly, if she were there alone, she'd be terrified if that were happening. So, do we think cameras make a difference? Do alarms make a difference?
I think we need a task force that can provide somewhat of a quick response, dispatch and response. I think that's what we need.
Well, I'll comment on a couple of things you said, Chris. First off, there is no real dead time. October of 2020 was the busiest month in the history of the police department. We had over 8,100 calls for service. There was an initial slowdown at the beginning of the coronavirus. We have seen the benefit of not having all of our bars opening and our drunken drivers at the end of the night, but the calls for service are still there. For right now, we have 4 calls pending. And we take calls across the city on a priority basis, where if there's a call that has danger to it or some sort of risk of life, those are going to get dispatched first. And that's citywide, all 94 square miles of the city of Palm Springs. It's not like we have a bunch of people just on standby all the time. The call volume, one major car accident can suck up 4 police officers and 4 calls in one big accident with traffic control. So we address the calls as they come in and on a priority basis based on the information we have. In terms of the call regarding the woman that was knocking on doors that day, I don't know what was going on in terms of calls for service or what was going on, but at any given point, we can have a lot of calls for service or we can have minimal calls for service. So it's not like there's nothing going on in the city because of COVID. Trust me, if you want to come out on a ride along post-COVID, you'll see how busy we are. It is very, very active. You would think that there's no pandemic going on in various parts of our city. But I'll assure you this, we will have more resources in that area. But I can assure you that we're not going to have a task force for this area to address all of the issues going on all the time. We do not have those resources available overall to put a task force together. We're going to have to, based on what the comments we're hearing here, your concerns of what's going on in the neighborhood, we're going to obviously have to put more resources in that neighborhood. That's clear. That's very clear.
I'd like to add a few more comments following up on Captain Kovaloff. You had mentioned regarding if it makes a difference with cameras on the building, et cetera. It really doesn't. It's going to take a consistent effort with our officers being out there, making contact with them. We realize it's gotten to the point where we're dealing with people that simply do not want the services. They don't. Obviously, right. We'll continue to offer those services when we make contact, but it's going to come down to consistent contact with them to where they feel uncomfortable and then they need to move on. And when we have on-site charges, whether it's drug possession or warrants, they're going to be taken to jail. And Once they realize that we're there often and consistent, then they start to pick up and they move to a different area of the city, and then we'll be doing this all over another area of the city. So it's gonna be a slow process. It's gonna take some time, but Captain Kovaloff is gonna work with Lieutenant Ariza to devote more resources there to make contact with them much more frequently on a consistent basis to start thinning out the population there, and those will realize that you can't just lay there and be comfortable, and if you want to be comfortable, you're going to have to go somewhere else.
I have a quick question, if I may, and a comment. And first of all, like, we appreciate everything that you guys are doing, and don't want to come across that we don't appreciate what you all are doing as the city and as police. My question is, about the golf course, and have you heard any complaints from the golf course and the ownership and management there as well, where the homeless are impacting them at all? And if there's a concerted effort, would that be helpful?
Gus, do you want to address that? I'll look it up right now on the computer if we've had any homeless calls at Talkwitz. I'm not aware of any, but I'll look it up right now.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Joseph Ibarra, and I'm one of your neighbors. I'm on the corner of Parr and Geometry Trail South. That's right at the base. There happens to be a water source there. I see a lot of the homeless. I see a lot of cars coming in. I've sent a few emails into the city, so this isn't the first time communicating. And my concern is they're using it for bathing. They're using it for filling up their jugs. Is there anything that can be done to close that off permanently? It's just a resource that probably is not a good resource for the residents, but a good resource for the homeless that are there in that area.
When you say a water source, could you?
I can answer that. I can explain that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I happen to be a plumbing expert. So there's backflow prevention devices all along our neighborhood that do not have coverings over them to protect them. So they are opening the petcock. They're called test petcocks. And they're opening those up and using them to wash and bathe.
Hey, Mark Krause, that sounds like that's in your department. Can you help there?
Yeah, well, I can't because I'm not going to go build cages.
No, Mark Krause, the DWA.
Yeah, no.
Mark, comment on that?
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to help you with that. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't because they belong to the homeowner. So.
No, if I may interject, sir. It's not on any of our properties. It's actually at the base of the little walk that goes up to the bridge. There's right by the palm trees in that area, there's a water source. I'm not sure who owns that, but it's not a residential resource.
Huh. Well, let me have my maintenance people check it out, unless it's some irrigation we have. I don't even know if there's city property.
There is irrigation on that little hillside.
Okay.
I have a comment. I wanted to ask a question. I know that, you started off with giving a couple of reasons why you can't move those people out from the wash. And one that, it's legal to camp. You can't keep them from camping. And it seems to me that, they're in the wash and we can't do anything. We can't discharge water to the wash unless we have a permit. It has to be just water. It can't have chlorine in it. You can't go down into the wash and grade down there, to open up a drain. I mean, anything that you do in a wash is just a bureaucratic nightmare. And there's a lot of laws that apply to keeping the wash clean, making sure that there's no pollution. The Regional Water Quality Control Board and the state has a lot of laws about what you can do in a channel and what you can't. It seems odd to me that under all those laws that you wouldn't have the justification for moving them out of there, because they bring trash down there, they defecate in the wash. I mean, you can't have a sewer spill into the wash or you get fined, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. It seems to me that's another angle. You know, it may not be, it might not be illegal to camp, but I think it really depends on where you're camping. You know, you can't camp in the middle of the street. You know, there's laws that prevent you from doing that. So the wash might be similar to that.
I agree with you, Mark, and that's one of the things that we're looking at as a city on how to protect that wash from that type of activity, and also the standpoint that, you know, sleeping in a wash isn't a safe thing to do, considering what happened on Valentine's Day a couple of years ago. It's not a safe area, and this is things right now that city staff is looking at the best way to address this and give us a tool to address it. But thank you for your comment there. I'm going to quick follow up on the gentleman that asked about Tockwitz Creek and any issues there. I'm looking at calls for service there. We have had a few different disturbance calls coming from the golf course in various areas, including the part of the golf course directly behind the area of Broadmoor and Cherry Hills. Not that many, but we have had some calls for service that have impacted the golf course.
Marlena Stewart, you've had your hand raised for a while.
Hi, thank you. So can you hear me? Okay, great. So Mike, thank you for coming out. You've been really responsive. I think the wash has been looking pretty good since you guys did your clean out on Tuesday. My question is about, we've talked a little bit about maybe putting up a large iron fence through there. Again, we're talking about making the place less desirable. We want it to be as difficult for them to kind of make this as a pass through, because, you know, you've got the Vons and you've got the liquor store just right up the street here. So you've got lots of people passing through, dumping their shopping carts at the wash, and then, you know, making their way to the camp. And so I'm just wondering, what about just through that area between the bridge and the golf course, either a large iron gate that's, you know, not so easy to pass through? And then and if that's not possible, what about just signs, just saying either no trespassing or danger, flood zone, or something about this area is patrolled weekly, valuables will be discarded if left unattended. Just again, something that makes the area less desirable. I do think your presence here, on whether it's going to be a weekly basis or having a task force here, I think that's going to be really great. But I'm just curious, what does that look like? Is it just patrols going up there in cars? Is it people? Is it officers maybe walking through the wash to investigate? Could you maybe explain that just a little bit more? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Marlena, for the comments. First, I like your idea of that access way where that fire started on the 10th. Obviously, that is a thoroughfare from Broadmoor, and you brought up whether it's Vaughn's, Rimrock, or just 111 for that matter. That is a thoroughfare into this area. So that, you know, if I guess we would look at the property owners and the powers that be in making a decision on a gate there. I guess my question would be is where would that fencing end? Because that embankment goes basically from Gene Autry to Lawrence Crosley, or to the golf course. As for how we would patrol that, you know, frequently in the patrol, then our officers getting out on foot in the evening and going out into the wash. That's what it's going to take. The disturbances, unfortunately, it really takes, to address a situation like this, is if they're causing this many problems, they have to understand their activity is not welcome there. And that's what we'll have to get across to them. We are very compassionate about getting them services, but some of them do not want the services, and we can offer and offer and offer. But unfortunately, if they're doing illegal activity, we'll have to address it to have them to leave that area and make it more comfortable. That's what we would do. And that's, you know, we've had officers going out there quite a bit more, but based on the comments we're hearing, and I understand it, I understand your concerns, everybody's concerns regarding the activity. And that's what it's going to have to take, more of a presence. because when we're out there, you're not going to see that type of activity. That's the reality of it. And that's not only this wash or anywhere in the city where we're having issues. Once we have a more of a presence there, the issues seem to diminish because that's our role in this, you know, in the city to provide those services.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Penny.
Oh, thank you. Somebody mentioned flood control before. And I'm a little curious about if the city of Palm Springs owns that space from the bridge to the golf course or through the golf course. Do you have to share that, or there, you know, and somebody else mentioned there's rules and regulations, you can't do this and that and blah, blah, blah. Can you explain that to us a little bit? Because we're a little curious. As a neighborhood association, we could go in there and take out the foliage and take it down, but we don't want to get arrested for trespassing.
The good question. So, you know, just like anywhere, there's parcels of land and there's different owners. And in this area in particular, if you were to go into the wash, say you were traveling northbound on Broadmoor, across Cherry Hills and went up the hill into the wash. And if you went left on that embankment, there's a small pole and a gate. From that section towards west, towards the Gene Autry Bridge, and about 25, maybe 40 yards out into the wash, that parcel is owned by the Riverside County Flood Control District. The remainder of the property on the east side of the bridge is City of Palm Springs property. Some of it obviously controlled by Tockwitz Creek Golf Course, but ultimately it's City of Palm Springs owned property. So it's a very small area of it that's Riverside County Flood Control District. Now, in terms of prosecution for trespassing, that land that is owned by the Riverside County Flood Control District, they would be the ones that would desire prosecution for trespassing. The city-owned property, which is public property per se, the city would have to make that decision for prosecution on something like that. So that's how that works, if that answers your question. I can show you a parcel map, to send you where the land ownership is there. And when you get on the other side of the bridge towards the west side of Gene Autry Bridge, there's a lot of different parcel owners.
So I think we need to summarize what we're trying to achieve and how we might go about it. So obviously we've got the issues in clearing as much as we can in the wash. We've got issues of additional police resources that can have more presence there. We have issues potentially when you see something that we're able to respond sooner. So those are the areas that we're focused on. Is there any comment on no parking around there? I mean, I'm just curious, because a lot of times people do want to park, and if we put up no parking signs, then that may not be what others want. But I'm just curious on Cherry Hill, parking, no parking on that one side.
Well, couldn't it be limited parking, like 1 hour or something like that? And the other thing is, as far as the no trespassing signs and things like that, you know, maybe they will be ignored, but then again, they are a deterrent.
Well, the signage we can do, the signage we're working on actually.
Hello, this is Matt Case, and we live on Cherry Hills, directly across the wash at Brentwood. I just want to voice, I don't think the no parking is a good idea. The reality is, if they're going to park, they park right behind our house, they park on Brentwood. If anything, it'll force them to park in front of our house, which they usually don't do. If they want to stay compliant with the law and still do whatever they're doing, they would just park in front of our house, which I'd prefer they not be, as opposed to, so that's kind of our voice on it.
Okay, thank you.
Matt, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
I'm not aware of, I don't live right there. I know you guys have front row to all of that. I mean, has it always been the one car, or do we have multiple cars that are parking there?
You know, it changes over the years, different cars at different times doing different things, but
okay.
I mean, you know, there's a blue truck that has a bunch of junk in it, but it mostly parks down by Mike McCullough's house a lot. And then there's the one that we all took a picture of recently. That was recent, and that's the one I talked to, who told me what he was doing. You know, just in his words, trying to help people over there.
Okay.
So, you know, and I mean, he does have a lot of water in his truck and whatever. I'm not trying to judge anything. And I told him our point of view, and he's the one that offered up who they all thought did it. So it varies. There's also a red Ford truck. Sometimes,
Okay.
an older
Hey,
one.
Mike, what about, you know, restricted parking, you know, by like permitted parking? You know, in West Hollywood, where we live in this dinky apartment part of the time, you know, it's restricted parking. And I'm telling you what, you know, no one can park here who isn't permitted. It keeps people out because the parking enforcement is very predatory, and, you know, they're a constant force. Just an idea, just throwing
That
out
is
an
always an option. If that's something a neighborhood really wants, that's an option that legally a city can do. You know, that has some drawbacks, but that's certainly not off the table.
Is there somebody on this regarding the fire? I just would like to know the fire that burned the palm trees on Cherry Hill of Mike's home.
Yeah.
Was that fire starting right directly where what we're calling the gated area that you can walk up through to get into the wash? Is that where that started?
Yes. I know the answer to that.
Okay. And if that's the case, and we got all of this going because, well, it needed to get going because it could have burned his house down. We every weekend are out running around in our golf cart, and when that happened, the next day we drove the wash along Cherry Hill, and I took photos of probably at least 5 fire sites in the wash that I had not necessarily seen the week before, even, because that's how often I'm doing that. And one of those fires had a tree that must have been 15, 20 feet high. It was a big tree. It had a large trunk. It was completely black. Okay. So I guess my question is, there's been a fire there before the Cherry Hill fire. Okay. Why wasn't there, was the tree just put out and everything went back to normal? Or can someone tell me if those fires were registered with the city, and did anyone come out to do a sweep right then? Because maybe Mike's trees wouldn't have burned had we been on that the week earlier, where I believe these fires were. I could be all wrong on my thinking, but I'm not that stupid to not remember one Saturday to the next. And I don't remember those fires, and those who walk their dogs can maybe clarify that issue.
To answer your question, yeah, like I said at the beginning, we've had several fires out there over the last year. We've had them, they've all been reported. Our fire department has responded to several. Some of them have been strictly warming fires where there might be people warming up at a campsite or cooking, and some of them might have been that caught a palm tree on fire, but there have been other fires there.
And some arson possibly.
So is that legal by city code, that you can be homeless and you can crap on public property and you can sleep right next to it?
And you can have a fire.
And you can have an open fire on public property? Is that legal?
No.
Okay, I just want to know, because I feel like we would have had at least 3 different fires there that we could have tackled, but you know, who's going to stay up and monitor that all night until it becomes a blaze? You know, I was shocked that this tree had to have burned in the last couple of weeks, and I wish someone would tell me I'm not a liar or drink too much, because this tree has not, it just jumped out at me, and I thought, wow, look at that. So I thought maybe they're coming for us, all these fires all of a sudden. And you know, a 20-foot tree charred.
It's an intimidation, possibly.
Significant to me. This was not a warming fire. I get that. So I'm just curious why within 2 weeks prior to the Cherry Hill fire, something didn't happen out there, because I can't imagine you're going to go spray that tree out and go home. I'm stymied by that.
the fire department responded to each one of these fires that we've been called on, and an investigation's been done by the fire department at each one.
So we're going on an hour here, and we have a list of things that we're going to do. And also, we're going to try and figure out that water source that you raised. And you heard the chief, there's a hypersensitivity to your concerns. We're hearing those, the chief and the captain. So, I think we need to let the police do their job. And, we can come back and talk again, but I think this has been helpful. But Mayor, is there anything else you want to say at this point?
I just want to thank everyone for coming here with solutions. We have 50 people on this call. Obviously, this is a huge issue for the neighborhood. We want you to feel safe in your homes and in your neighborhood, and we're taking this seriously. I hope you can see. So I appreciate the solutions-oriented, nature of this call. Sometimes that's not how these calls go, and really appreciate the efforts here to all work together to make sure everyone can be safe in their neighborhood. We want that too. So, for the DWA, this is the first that at least that I'm hearing about the issues that you're experiencing. So I hope you will reach out to city staff as well as everyone who's on this call. You can reach out to me directly as well if you want to talk further about this. But we want to get these things done and quickly, and then monitor for anything else that we might need to do.
And thank you,
When
Chief.
would we maybe have a follow-up meeting to find out, what has been done? What would be a reasonable period of time for action to have been taken, and all of the neighbors to sort of digest that and say, yeah, things are better and we feel like things, what would be a reasonable window of time before we were to meet again?
Well, I would like to at least give it a couple of weeks.
All right.
Now, in the meantime, you've got our numbers, and I'm going to actually also put my cell number in here. You can feel free to call me in the meantime if you want to. Okay.
I think, following up is a good commitment from us. We want to make sure that this is resolved and not just have a meeting. But for the police department, is there a contact that the neighbors can have? I know we have neighborhood officers and things like that. If they're having a difficult time getting through dispatch and they have an immediate concern, what would be the best way to address that?
You could have, we can have Captain Kovaloff or Lieutenant Ariza put it in the chat right now, the various ways of contact. It's not only by phone number, but our email or our non-emergency line. We'll put that in the chat right now. And then as far as a follow-up meeting, we will stay in contact with Denise Goolsby, who will reach out to your neighborhood chair and organize the next Zoom meeting. So we will be in consistent contact with her. When we have enough sufficient information to provide an update, she'll coordinate with your neighborhood so we can do this again soon.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
There's some hands up. Would you mind answering those people or talking to them?
Sure. Go ahead, please.
Real quickly. When you decide to clean this brush out, please let us know, because if we've got 50 people on there, we get many hands make light work. I'm willing to go down and do physical labor I'm sure many other people will do the same if you just give us some time.
Thank you.
We might take you up on that.
That's really nice of you.
Did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, so where the fire was across the street from Mike McCullough's house, it's all charred. There's this charred remains. I was wondering, maybe this is for David Reddy, the city manager, to answer, but is there a way that, whose responsibility would it be to clean up all the charred remains, maybe plant new oleander there that was there before, and take care of the watering, and there's like melted utility stuff there and everything?
It's a good question, Tom. I don't know, was that fire actually, was that private property or was that on city property? I don't know specifically.
It's along the wash. It's the bank of the wash there, where it meets Cherry Hills, the road, Broadmoor and Cherry Hills.
Oh, on the other side, so where there's no houses, that would be there. Okay. All right.
It's actually city property, and there's a cable TV box there that kind of was injured. But that's on your side. On the
Yeah,
other side
okay.
of the street, it's Mike's.
Okay, that'll be part of the cleanup piece. Thank you, Tom. Anyone else? Okay. Great.
Thanks, David. I appreciate you and Denise and Christy and Mike and Brian and Gus. I think we've made a lot of progress today, and we're going to move in the right direction. Look forward to hearing from all of you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Have a good night. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Be safe.
Bye.